you for taking the time to sit
You're
down
welcome.
with me.
Thank you for coming.
You and I have known each other for a long time, but most of my readers probably aren't very familiar with you. So I was just hoping you would start by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're ready for governor.
Sure. I have, oh my gosh, my career. I'm actually sharing my resume on the website for people to look at because I've done so many different things. I'm what you call experienced and have a lot of different experiences across a number of sectors. But I've had a small business owner, an educator. There weren't jobs, but that's a whole other story. And then nonprofit, leader, and worked in corporate communications. And then there's a fifth one on that list. Oh, and political campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I've done all of that. So, and from all that, the real theme across my work is I'm a problem solver. And I'm often called in, particularly with my regular clients that are not campaigns, called in to solve a problem. And so that's what I do. I go in and figure out what their definition of the problem is and what their expectations are, and then I go about figuring out how to make it work in their organization.
Now, you've worked on a lot of campaigns. You've never run for office yourself,
No,
though.
I have
When
not.
did you start thinking about running for office?
Oh, wow. Seriously thinking about running for office the end of January this year. My intent has never been to run. I've gone and looked into something, and then I look into it and I'm like, oh, no, I wouldn't, that work would not be the kind of thing I could do.
Mm-hmm.
I do think this work I could do because we have a lot of problems and they need to be solved, and they need to be, we just need to do it a whole different way than it's been done of late. And so I'm intrigued by that, and I like problem solving.
What do you see as the most pressing issues that the next governor of Iowa needs to address?
I think the first issue for anybody who's even a candidate is they have to be focused on building trust with Iowans, because Iowans are distrustful of pretty much everyone and every institution, every campaign, every political party. It's right now there's a high distrust. So we have to be focused on rebuilding trust in order to get through the campaign. But in terms of issues, I can tell you the issues that are my personal concerns, but I also know if I get hired for this job, my concerns are not going to be what I'll be working on. I'll be working on the concerns of the Iowans. Mm-hmm. And now, I think there's an intersection, but so there are four. Number one, clean water. Every aspect of this. 15 years ago, the people of Iowa passed a constitutional amendment, and it hasn't been enacted yet. Mm-hmm. And it's part of it is about clean water. It's also about our rivers and everything related that way. Second is public schools and the vouchers. This is a disaster freight train coming at us. Mm-hmm. Freight train loaded with nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And if we don't deal with this, we are going to have, it's going to be catastrophic for the state. And so that is the number one thing, or number two on my list. None of these have really a priority one over the other, in my opinion. Third, healthcare issues. Particularly, there are three. Cancer rates, what we have to deal with regarding cancer, and just this, it's catastrophic that we are at the second worst in the country. And that is going to be a long-term problem with a lot of complexity to it. It's not going to be a simple solution problem, but it has to be addressed. Then we're going to become a women's health desert, because the OBGYNs will be fleeing Iowa, and every woman, I mean, the irony of people talking about, well, we just need to have more babies, dude, you just made that really difficult, because if we don't have OBGYNs, but the thing is, there's so many people who don't understand, for women, OBGYNs are our whole life that we see OBGYNs. Maybe not the first 8-10 years,
Mhm.
but after that, yeah. And so, if your mom or your grandmother has to have a complete hysterectomy or any kind of hysterectomy, that's an OBGYN, folks, with a surgeon specialty, so it's it's a big deal. Then third under healthcare is the nursing home situation in the state is so egregious, and we just have to do, our elders deserve better.
You're giving just so many ideas of things I
And
want
there's
to.
one third thing, there's
fourth
little
thing,
further.
okay.
Eminent domain.
Mm.
It is an abuse right now, the way they are misusing it on this pipeline, and it's because the misuse is not because of the pipeline, it's because that is a private company. And eminent domain is meant for public spaces that we share, and a private company should not be able to use that law to come in and claim space.
So do you support the bill that is now sitting on the governor's desk, waiting for her to sign or veto?
I have not read the
pipeline
bill.
Okay. I want to go back to the clean water,
Okay.
because you talked about, for people who may not remember the background, in 2010, the
Mhm.
voters of Iowa supported this constitutional amendment that called for funding a natural resources trust fund with, the next time the state raises the sales tax, 3/8 of a cent of that
Mhm.
revenue would go toward this fund. Would you be advocating then for raising the sales tax, or do you see Iowa funding that clean water work a different way?
Well, the way, because it was done on the sales tax, that's at this point in time the only way we can do that. And I do think we have to do it.
Mhm.
That said, I also think we could revisit how we fund that, just like we're gonna have to revisit how we fund our schools and our counties, because it's when I read the comments last week from the governor and from particularly from Pat Grassley, I mean, first of all, the elementary teacher in me, her head raised again, and she's like, okay, Grassley, you never got through math, clearly, because your math here is irrational. And then second, I was like, I will give him 2 points for creative writing, because it was a lovely piece of fiction, but like it was not the kind of communication that should have come from an elected official after that egregious decision.
About the passing the school vouchers. And how would you go about rolling that back? Because right now it looks like the legislature would not be inclined.
I've been talking with some people about that, and one of the great suggestions that I heard is, well, why not establish a family income level? And if your family income is above X line, that would reduce the numbers, but still make them available to people who might need. That would be a way, for a starter, to just reduce the penalty that's coming at the rest of us who want our kids in public schools.
What other, I'm sorry, I'm now circling back to clean water again.
Go right ahead, I'm following you.
What other policies do you feel like Iowa could do, aside from funding the trust fund, to address some of the water problems we have?
Oh, I actually think there's a lot, and I don't think it has to be a fight between ag and the rest of the state. To me, okay, I'm gonna say it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple concept. It's complex to implement, okay? But to me, if we had 180,000 hogs in 180,000 humans in one space, they'd have to have a sewage system. All right, so let's figure out, for all these hog lots and that kind of stuff, sewage systems. Let's do it. And let's look at how do we build it, and how do we scale it, and how do we fund it. All those things will have to be addressed. But, that's an idea. I think there will probably be people with better solutions. Normally, when I'm brought in to solve problems, and I identify what a problem is, I go out and find experts in the field and bring them to the table and say, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we want to achieve. How do we do this? Literally, how do we do this? And realistically, how do we do this? And not any pie in the sky wishes.
the next governor is gonna have to deal with a huge budget crisis. We can already see with what's happening with the state budget now. What would be your approach? I mean, the combination of the school vouchers escalating.
What they're doing to the counties.
The income tax base, the flat tax has been implemented. The federal funding from the American Rescue Plan is, not gonna be renewed, so.
Yeah, I don't have a ready answer right now, Lori. I recognize that as the biggest thing to face once in office. That'll be the first thing. But I don't have an answer. It won't be stalling on the budget for 3 months longer than you're supposed to for schools to meet, they can't meet their deadlines when that was just it was I felt like I was in high school with a crowd of people who were the mean girls and the mean boys. And they were just trying to figure out how could they be the meanest to the people of this state.
People don't remember, but for many years, the legislature used to set the school funding more than a year in advance.
Yeah.
They'd be setting it for the following year, and now they can't even set it for the upcoming year.
It's terrible.
So
it's just so irresponsible.
What do you feel, what would you say to Democrats? I talk to a lot of Democrats who get anxious about a primary where they feel like they like both candidates, and I mean, do you have any differences on issue positions with Rob Sanner? What would be your argument for people voting for you?
Well, it doesn't even have to be about Rob. We should have primaries at every level. Primaries, the reason we're getting low turnouts is because we're not having competitive primaries that go out and help bring people into the process and get them engaged. The concept of primaries being bad came out of consultants wanting more money to spend for later in the campaign. And to a certain extent, they were right. But now we've gone overkill on it, trying to stop primaries, and that's just the wrong thing to do. Primaries are good. And so at the core, I think, stop thinking primaries are bad.
Yeah, I like a good, healthy primary.
It's fun.
But for people who are just starting to learn more about the candidates, what would you say about, here's where you differ on the issues, or is it more of an emphasis of certain things?
I think what it is it's going to be how the campaign functions. And so what I'm focused on is building trust with the voters, and the process for building trust and getting out there and engaging in that and having conversations, not standing at the front of the room and talking and then taking 3 questions and then leaving, but rather having a structured conversation process, and I'm calling them so here's what I'm doing, Lori. I'm going and I'm saying, hi, I'm Julie Stauch. I've applied for the job of governor, and I'm here for my first job interview with you guys who are part of the group of people who will be deciding on who the next governor is. And like any interview process, I get to ask you questions, and you get to ask me questions. And then because we have to figure out, can we work together? And then I give them a worksheet, because you can't take the teacher out of me. And then I have them go through and they fill out the worksheet. And I've already done this down in Wayne County as sort of a test, because I wanted to see, because if it was going to be a disaster, I wanted to know it before we actually got in. And it was not. It was well received, but they fill out their sheets individually. I get to keep those. And then they do individual discussion, small group discussion, come back, report out, and then I tell them my point of view. I don't want to tell them my priorities before we begin the discussion, because I don't want to influence what they say, and because I just want to hear flat out where they are and what they think. And then and then they ask me questions, and it was great. It got really positive response.
I need to ask, because you used to live in Mason City.
Yeah.
And I have a low-key obsession with these, I call them mid-sized cities, some people call them micropolitan areas. These are the former Democratic strongholds, the cities with populations between 10,000 and 30,000. And do you have thoughts about what's happened in those cities? Why are people in those cities not supporting Democrats anymore? And
we haven't been showing up there. I mean, I think one of the reasons, I worked for Mike Franken as his campaign manager. I came in March 1st. And we got Mike out there, and he went everywhere, and and that was doing his own meetings. He also went to things that county parties were doing and all, but he was doing his own meetings and kept picking up more and more people as a result of that. And that really helped him get to the win in the primary. It was because he was available, he talked to them, he likes people, and that came through, and I like people, and I think these are gonna be a lot of fun, given what I saw in Wayne County. But, I think, say your question again.
But what we see in these towns, like Mason City, like Fort Dodge, Newton, Ottumwa, Burlington, Clinton, these are places that used to vote for Democrats down the line, and now they've stopped voting for Democrats really at any level. Some of these counties don't even have any Democrats at county level office. And what caused that, and how can that be turned around?
Well, I think it's because, like I said, I haven't said this part. As Democrats, we went way too heavily into targeting. Now, targeting is a good thing, but when you target too narrowly, you limit your path to victory, okay? And so they've done, that's what they've done, and you have to target more broadly, but you also have to, like with the House and the Senate, you have to recruit more candidates. They have to recruit everywhere. And I know that this last time around they were working on doing more of that, and in both the House and the Senate. And so I just think we have to be in their space and not in their face, but you know what I mean, but available for them to come to know people and build trust.
I was hoping you would talk a little bit about what you learned as working on Pete Buttigieg's campaign and Mike Franken's campaign, and other Iowa campaigns you've worked on, and how you would apply those lessons.
Well, first of all, in both cases, both of those candidates were very good at getting out and around in the state. It was sort of a targeting issue. We made a shift in Pete's campaign, and I had an opportunity to be a part of that discussion, and where instead of everybody was going to the big 8 counties because that's where half the delegates were. But when you have 26 candidates in the race and you divide that by those half delegates, all of a sudden it's not a significant amount. And so we switched and started going out more widely and hitting more counties. And the only other candidate to do that was Bernie Sanders. And there we go. We came in neck and neck. We did win with Pete, and so that was a big deal there. With Mike, it was similar, but they're not the same counties. So let me go wonky here for you.
I like it. That's good.
Okay.
I like that.
All right. So when you look at, you have to look at every type of race differently. So a strategy for a primary is not a strategy for the general. A strategy for a special election is not like either of those races either. So you have to understand your strategic choices and how you're going to make them. And with Mike, so I was like, I wonder how much will overlap from what we did with Pete. And I went in and I started running the numbers, and some of it overlaps, but not all of it. And it was real interesting where there were other opportunities and that they weren't in the same spaces. And that was true for the primary, but then for the general, it's another set of counties. And so, the good thing about going out in a primary and going everywhere is you build a base of support everywhere. And then when you have to start shifting and not being in a space quite as much, you've already got some support there, and you can build from that. So I think that's a part of it.
What do you say right now? I mean, Democrats are at a really low point in Iowa in terms of the voter registration disadvantage and not having anyone in the congressional delegation. And mathematically, I mean, you cannot win a statewide election in Iowa with just the Democratic votes and, carrying independents. What would be your argument that you're a person who can get some crossover votes?
Well, there's two parts to the argument. One part is that in this year that we're about, this election cycle that we're in, and the 2026 election, there are so many people, again, back to this lack of trust. They're distrusting both parties, and both parties have lost sight of their mission, and neither one of them are functioning well. And okay, right now it looks like the Republicans are because they got a majority, but they're not functioning well. And they got a lot of division in their party, and so that division becomes an opportunity. But also, in this year, I think we're going to see a lot of people move in response to the actions of this recent legislative session and the one, since the last time the governor was up 4 years ago. And then we're also going to see a reaction to the federal. And a lot of that will play out in this race. And so how it will play out, I don't have a feel for that yet. The more I'm out having those conversations, the better feel I'll have.
Is there anything I didn't ask you
Yes.
that would be important?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important for people to know that I have a lot in common with them. I've been working since 8th grade. I know what it's like to have a full schedule of school, a full schedule of activities, and have to make sure you're doing your 20 hours of work in dad's greenhouses, right? That's how I started. And so I've worked ever since in my life. Work is a part of life. And I am not someone who, I paid my way through college. I had student loans. Thankfully, they had better loan programs then, and I was able to get it all paid off in 10 years, and it wasn't the sums that I'm seeing from other people. I think we could do better there, but that's a federal problem. But I mean, my background is as a worker, and I actually enjoy it. So.
And you said you've been doing these, you're starting to do these meetings. Do you plan to hit all 99 counties, or how have you figured
I'm breaking the state down by the community college districts, because one of the things I learned in Mason City is that the community colleges really have create a kind of cohesion in their area. So it's not just Cerro Gordo County that the community college impacts. It's those other, I think it's 9, maybe now it's a little bit bigger. I have a map that tells me that, I just don't have it in front of me. And so I think that by doing it that way, it's not that far for people to travel. So it doesn't matter which community I'm in, people can come from the nearby communities to participate. And then also, it's then achievable for me to make 4 rounds of the state in a quarter. And so I'll be close to everybody for in that time. But then the other thing is, I can also say, if I'm out there the second week in June, I'll be there the second week in September, I'll be there the second week in December, and the second week in March. And so they can start to plan, if people want to sign up for our interview sessions, then they can plan and say, oh, let's try to get in on this one and send that to us. And then we can look at, okay, the next time we're there, can we work this one in? Yes. So we'll do ours, but we'll also take on, we're inviting people to have an interview session with their service club, with their, could be a Sunday school class of a sort, could be any kind of group that gets together, like a book club or whatever. If they want to have us come in and do this, great, we'll do it. And I say us because there's the video guy who comes along with me and captures all this stuff, and then we talk about where we were and what we've done.